Hey guys, it's Blockchain Brad, and today I'm very excited to talk about a brand new project. Some may have heard of it. It's called Hybridblock, and we have two very special guests before me, a CEO and a co-founder. There's one in particular that you may recognize, no doubt, from his Olympic experience, and he's obviously famous around the world, and that is Apolo Ohno. So firstly, Apolo, thank you so much for being on this channel today.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
So just a bit of background on Apolo himself. He's quite an impressive figure, not only in the blockchain space, but also his credentials date way back into the Olympic space. And it's just fitting we're talking about that, given that he is in Korea now. So if you're not familiar with Apolo, he's one of the most decorated, if not the most decorated, American Winter Olympian, which is phenomenal in itself. He's won 8 Olympic gold medals. But in terms of the blockchain space, it's important that we recognize just his influence in terms of tech. He's had more than 10 years experience in this space of technology. He's an entrepreneur. He's, and as Jonathan will articulate, he's also very knowledgeable in many areas. He's the co-founder of several businesses, including WellTech. He's been involved in telecommunications, and he's very well versed in Asia. He's also been a co-founder of Quantum Block Capital, which is a very important VC firm. So once again, Apolo, you've got a lot of experience behind you. You're entering into a blockchain market for the first time in a very big way. So welcome once again. We're looking forward to hearing all about your exciting project.
Thank you.
And also before him, we have a very, very well-experienced gentleman. His name is Jonathan Bates. And if you're not familiar with him, you're going to be soon, because he is the chairman and CEO of Hybridblock. And he has more than 25 years experience in the financial sector. He's been the managing director of the J.P. Morgan. He's also been a senior vice president of Citigroup, and we could go on and on. So we could talk about Barclays, we could talk about Smith Barney, we could talk about his specializations. But obviously we're limited with time, and his credentials are far too long to talk about today. So, gentlemen, on behalf of all the people who want to know more about Hybridblock, thank you for coming on. Let's get stuck into the real crux of why we're here and ask, what is Hybridblock? Fundamentally, in a nutshell, if you could tell us, let's say in 5 minutes, what is it about?
Sure, I can give it a shot, Jonathan, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
So Hybridblock is an ecosystem designed to give all different levels of people who have little to no sophistication or understanding of what cryptocurrencies are, all the way to the professional trader who's using the most sophisticated tools on the planet. We've got 3 distinct platforms. The first one called Base Trade, which is really geared towards the average retail investor, the person who has limited knowledge about cryptos or Bitcoin, but wants to participate in some capacity and is looking for an easy on-ramp to bringing fiat into the system to begin their journey down this crypto asset world that we've been involved in for quite a while. The second platform is called Hybrid Exchange, and Hybrid Exchange is a crypto-to-crypto currency exchange that allows people to transact in all the different altcoins markets. The one major differentiating fact with our cryptocurrency exchange is the fact that we have something called a world global order book, which allows people to come to one of our platforms, which is the Hybrid Exchange. They'll sign up for an account, AML, KYC process, verification process, and from there, they'll be able to trade many different altcoin assets that we don't have listed on our exchange, but because we are connected via backend API to call it the top 5 to 10 exchanges around the world, they can still have exposure to those altcoin markets without having to go through the same AML, KYC, verification process, and funding mechanisms associated with having multiple screens open on multiple accounts and multiple exchanges. So we just want to simplify that process and streamline it to give you access via one specific data point versus having multiple.
Okay, if we can pull it back, thank you so much, Apolo, for that. But if we can pull it back to a more fundamental analysis of the what in terms of what you've stated on your website. So I'll just clarify that for the audience. You state that you are the platform for advanced blockchain solutions. So Jonathan, on that note, can you tell us a little bit more about the term solution? Because it was fascinating that that's one of the parts of your title. So why are you a solution, and what are you a solution to?
What's the problem and what's the solution, right? It's a good question. So the problem, and this is part of the reason I made this jump, actually, the problem is have you tried to open accounts at 10 or 20 different exchanges yourself? I mean, if you're lucky to get through 10 of them, sometimes you don't get, a response for 6 weeks or 6 months. It's difficult, okay? Not only that, but the depth of the bid at each individual exchange is relatively thin by my personal, I guess, Wall Street standards. So we're able to solve both of those problems right away. I mean, you can sign up once with us. We have already done the legwork to get to all the exchanges. We can offer you a much deeper bid. If you're looking to sell something, we can hit all of our exchange partners. In addition to whatever our liquidity is, we can spread that out in a way that gives the client the best execution in one interface and offer a better diverse group of coins as well.
I see. So you're obviously redressing the solution, the issue right now of multiple access points with a one-stop shop, as Apolo was suggesting, indicating that you are going to be a go-to point for all exchanges around the world via your technology. Is that pretty much in a nutshell?
That definitely is it in a nutshell. Plus the offering, we get all the coins that each one of our exchange partners offers as well. So our menu is going to be giant. Our liquidity is going to be giant. And not to mention the other solution I think we're solving is we're going to have a fully staffed call center. I mean, it seems like it would be such a simple thing a very low barrier to entry to be able to call how many other businesses do you know of where you can't call someone when there's a problem? I mean, we think that's an easy one to solve. So that's another solution we're providing.
I see. And it's interesting that your title has the word platform in it. So obviously people could presume that you are a blockchain by design, but we need to talk about that a little bit more. Are you in fact an actual blockchain in terms of infrastructure?
No.
Okay. So, again, in the title it says you are a platform for advanced blockchain. So how is it that you are a platform?
So our platforms are really designed to facilitate trade in its simplistic form. In terms of blockchain solutions, we plan on, because we deal with many different wallets and blockchain technologies in terms of how they integrate themselves into our system, aka our exchange, and how our communication via messaging talk back and forth between their wallets. Every company has their own unique wallet. Every company, if they are a blockchain solution or a blockchain company, that communication has to be done on the back-end architecture with our tech guys and our dev team. So do we ourselves solving the blockchain problem? In a nutshell, we are. We think that the greatest technologies will always come and rise to the top, and they always need a place to facilitate those types of trade. Regardless of how great your technology is or how good your team is, if you don't have liquidity and you don't have an ability to trade that technology, no one knows about it, and people don't have an opportunity to own it. Right. And so that's why we believe so much in the exchange-related technology.
Which makes a lot of sense. So essentially what you're saying and explaining is that there are technological elements to what you design, but first and foremost, you're a service, a provision for the people via a central point of access. So we can talk about more of those 4 points that you mentioned before, Apolo, with regard to, I guess, the products or the offerings that you provide. The first one, obviously, is your hybrid central mechanism. Can you talk specifically about what that is in more detail?
Sure. So the Hybrid Central is an app that is designed, and we will probably have a website as well, but it is an app designed to give you information. We wanted to create a hub that people can come to learn about blockchain 101, can learn about cryptocurrency, crypto assets 101, altcoins, why they should care, how it impacts their life in any way. And if they want to participate, they should be informing themselves, even at the lightest possibility or the very basic bare minimums, to just understand what this space is really all about and why I'm buying something. The common misnomer associated with the retail market is they usually buy something without really understanding what it is they're buying. And I understand it, right? They want to take advantage of the hype and the cycle and the buzz that's happening in the market. But the more educated a consumer is, the more qualified and the better choices that consumer will actually make. So we believe heavily that education is a critical piece towards mass adoption.
I see. So obviously, Jonathan, with your experience in the banking sector as well, you've seen many products come to the fore in through your roles. So in that sense, I did want to ask you specifically, both of you, why the blockchain technology then, if you are providing for educational services, if you're providing for things like VC and exclusive access to information, why use blockchain technology to do that when you can do that in a centralized system now? Because currently, for example, with your banking experience, it's a centralized mechanism, and you can provide many services that are educational as well via services that are already built in as such. So another example is you could do it through the internet, through a website. A very robust one, no doubt, but you could. So why use blockchain technology to do this?
Well, I think what we're really trying to do is to educate people about blockchain technology and its uses, not necessarily deliver it on a blockchain per se. If that's what you're saying, I apologize. I'm not totally.
Yeah, no, I am saying that because people are going to perceive it as that you are utilizing such technology, given that you're ICOing, given that you're utilizing, the industry itself. Is it fair to say that you will be using some sort of technology to deliver Hybridblock on the blockchain?
I'm not sure that that's our initial goal or not our goal per se, but what our goal is to have an educated set of customers, really. I mean, I think that's what Apollo was really getting at. So it's more about having a large and growing, educated and I guess confident group of users, and building an organic ecosystem around the theme of blockchain. Okay.
I see. So just to clarify, sorry to interrupt, but just to clarify, the actual component of Hybridblock is not going to be utilizing blockchain technology. It's actually going to be a service that provides information for Hybridblock. So in that sense, you'll be utilizing the Ethereum network, as you know. But is this element going to be actualized on a blockchain itself in any way?
Our exchange is blockchain agnostic, so to speak. So although we utilize all of the same transparency mechanisms that exist, excuse me, we are not a decentralized exchange. We are a centralized exchange. And the reason why is because decentralized exchanges and decentralized blockchains simply aren't fast enough right now to handle the type of transactional volume and speed that is normally associated with the type of centralized exchange that we have now. For example, 40,000 messages per second or per minute is very, very slow in terms of exchange-related technologies. So when we've talked about our branding and advanced blockchain solutions, we're very future forward thinking in terms of how we plan to be a player in the space, not only as an exchange provider and a facilitator of trade, but also in the way that we have our hybrid lab system, meaning we plan to facilitate many different blockchain related technologies and incubate them through a funding mechanism that is inside of our platform, very similar to what Binance Labs does on their platform and a few others. We also in the future will have the same type of thing. So we're thinking forward. We want to provide funding, resources, team, and support to many different blockchain-related technologies in the future. Although that's not the primary focal point of our business. The primary focal point of our business is to facilitate trade.
I see.
And Brad, just a comment real quick too. One thing about each of these decentralized exchanges, you notice there's wide disparity in pricing of the same asset at different exchanges, right? So one thing, another, if you will, solution is that we can take, by centralizing somewhat some of these exchanges' prices, we can provide a better product and service element to our clients. So I guess even though it's not proprietary to us per se, our aggregation of this is somewhat revolutionary given our ambitions for the number of customers that we want to sign up.
Right, which makes a lot of sense. So once again, just to clarify, is that you are the centralized exchange, as we've seen as examples, we currently in the market like Binance that you've referenced. But let's talk a bit more about your service, because I'm trying to envisage a moment where you see, for example, Binance offering an educational hub, because essentially that's, you're providing something we haven't yet seen. And so that's why I want to really make this clear, is that you're providing a service specifically in a centralized mechanism that is Hybridblock. But in terms of access, what is that going to look like in terms of user interface? How are people going to be able to interact and utilize these educational opportunities that you're going to set up? Will it be something that you access via easy access points of a link that you provide through an app, or how will people do it?
Yeah, you'll have links. We'll do some soft marketing via digital. You can go to an Apple store, download it to your iPhone or perhaps your Android device, and from there you'll be able to utilize and access these different types of data points. We're playing around with the idea of having a community component associated with this to provide influencers, maybe like yourself, who want to have their own channel and their own area in which they can talk about from their perspective everything blockchain related, give opinions, reviews, etc. And those will be, we're trying to figure out if those should be freemium models, meaning we'll have the bulk generic component of our education system be free because it's an ancillary product. We're not planning to make any money off of that. But then when people want to go deeper and they want to hear from professionals, they want to hear from influencers, there'll be a fee maybe perhaps associated with that. And we're not sure if we want to charge actual fiat, or we want to charge cryptocurrency, or we want to charge hybrid token. But those are ideas that we're playing around with right now.
And I appreciate you asking about the fees. That was my very next question. If we could talk about the next point now, and the next element, which is your base trade component. How does that work, in conjunction with the former point?
Sure. So base trade, I guess you can call it the simplest way for someone who doesn't understand crypto or doesn't have a lot of experience in buying crypto get into the sector. So usually for the people who've never bought any type of cryptocurrency in their life, and they want to get fiat into the system, very much like how Coinbase operates, right? They make a very simple user interface. It's clean. There's not a lot of different options. It's buy, it's sell. You have your different wallets, you have your vault, etc. But for the most part, it's really simple and straightforward. And that's the exact same type of methodology that we want to use for the average consumer. So I want, for example, like my father to be able to use this platform on his phone and be able to purchase his first ever cryptocurrency in minutes of signing up with an account and funding his account. I think that's really important for us as an entity to try to solve some of those pain points. And the education app is designed to inform people and simplify that process so they understand how to go through that process as well. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. One feeds into the other. So moving down into your hybrid exchange, obviously you're addressing that now. Again, Jonathan, can you talk a bit through the centralized nature of this hybrid exchange? Just how fundamental is its design?
And you'll have to excuse me, and my knowledge of deep tech is, not as high as others in our organization.
That's okay.
So I'm not. There's a lot that I can't technically speak about. What I can speak about is my personal experience on Wall Street and how this relates to that. And I think all I can really say, I guess, in a real simplistic type of an answer is going to be, we want to deliver what I see as relatively low bar type services from the world I come from that just aren't currently available in the crypto world. So, being able to aggregate prices, being able to have a deeper order book, I mean, these are simple concepts. And, but no one's doing them. It's just like everyone kind of notices, there's an arbitrage between exchanges, but nobody ever does anything about it. Somebody's got to get in there and do it. Right. And that's what we're doing. We're putting resources into, building something that's a better user interface for the world so it can be delivered up to Wall Street standards.
Well, it's interesting that you're mentioning this. The reason why I wanted to ask you is because essentially what you're no doubt doing is moving across horizontally from your experience in your sector and into a not dissimilar market. Given that it is a centralized mechanism, we're still looking at a vast range of tokens that can be traded, much like the stock market, much like banking in its nature. So really, you're well experienced already. You're situated for this kind of thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like I am, and I'm very passionate about it. I can see the holes in the system, and it excites me that they're so easy to fix. Now, I say easy, not necessarily from the technology standpoint, but identifying what they are and hiring smart people that can help tackle the problem. Geez, that's right up my alley. I'm glad to be able to help be a part of that.
Absolutely. Well, we could move down to that last one as well, because that feeds very well into the trade element, the hybrid trade. So, Apolo, how important is that last part, given that that's the fundamental design of everything that you stand for?
Sure. So hybrid trade, which I think we're renaming it to hybrid terminal,
Right.
but for the purposes of the interview, you can call it hybrid trade. So that is a professional trading platform, and that is designed to cater to the needs of professional traders who are used to utilizing the sophisticated tools normally associated with very high frequency trading, algorithmic strategies that they implement and they plug into this system. And so the reason why it's different, because there are high frequency trading mechanisms that work on existing exchanges today, and they primarily make up for most of the volume that you see on the exchanges, by the way. When you see all those crazy numbers going back and forth, that's not individuals firing at their fingertips.
No.
That's actually, those are automated bot systems inside. So hybrid trade and hybrid terminal is a downloadable, executable program that you would download, and you would run this on your PC. And by running this robust system on your PC, you'll have ping times, you'll have level 2 messaging and quotes and data feeds. It's something called a direct market access terminal. So direct market access means you plug in directly into those exchanges to get real-time data and feeds based upon those quotes that happen inside. So in the simplistic form, it means that professional traders can use these tools that we have inside hybrid terminal, and they can plug into the existing exchanges around the world to get the fastest quotes of the prices that are being ordered out there. And the depth of the order book is significantly different. So I can see history, I can see price, I can see ARB. All these different types of tools are going to be displayed on the system.
Right.
So the one key component that's different is we have an entirely separate dev team who's building that product with us. That's our internal team who has been commissioned and tasked with solely focusing on the hybrid terminal. Now, the reason why this is unique, Brad, is because these guys have produced Wall Street grade level technologies in the past, and they continuously operate those technologies right now. So those operating systems are robust enough, secure enough, and they've been through the architecture side to leave kind of no stones unturned in terms of the preparatory phase, in terms of when they build products. And we try to bring that same type of idea set to the marketplace. And actually, one of the guys on our team was the one who really fundamentally was the idea behind building hybrid terminal, because he saw that there was nothing that existed inside the crypto sphere right now. And he felt from his sophisticated level and from his professional trading background that this was going to be the next level for institutions to come into the space. And if they had access to tools and a platform like this, it would drastically increase the amount of money from an institution that come into the space, because right now those types of systems do not exist. And so they go hand in hand with regulatory, right? The more that regulatory has a sandbox in which we know how we can operate means that the more we'll see the Goldmans and the rest of these big institutions come into space to try to participate in this ever-growing economy.
Yes.
But right now, that's what we've been focusing on for the past 12 months is that hybrid terminal. We're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, so obviously it's been quite a long-term plan to design this. And in a nutshell, you could argue that it's essentially a very complex software.
Yes.
So in that sense, it's a product as much as a service.
It's absolutely a product for sure. And it's still a service still. It's still a service. You know, and Jonathan can speak to this, but there are firms out there. When I say firms, I mean specific iBanking sector who would pay a lot of money to utilize these types of platforms, and they do. That's the same thing. They pay for these services in Wall Street, and so we believe that this is the next generation of what's going to happen in the coming months and years.
I see. So essentially, you clearly are not just a service. You've got the products that are going to then build out the whole point of your project, which is to become a very, very reputable, centralized exchange, and you need these products to make that work. So they're all elements that work together, spokes in a wheel that is Hybridblock.
Right. Yeah. It completes the offering. It creates a better, more robust client experience. And if you think about it, you start with the clients at the base trade, where it's simply it could be as easy as pointing and clicking and having a shopping cart, and we've discussed that, but you move all the way up to something that's akin to like a Bloomberg. I got my first Bloomberg. I had one of the first Bloombergs actually in 1992 in my first job. And really they haven't changed the screens too much, ironically, but it's become so important. And we want to be that important to we want to be as important to the crypto industry as Bloomberg is to the financial industry, but we're going to be in various different business segments as well, other than just the terminal. But the terminal is super important. So thanks, Apolo, for talking about that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And again, I guess the big question I wanted to ask you with regard to that is, once someone does purchase that or they utilize that service, will it be much like, for example, a download process like Microsoft, where once they have it, it's accessible, it's usable, or is there a fee involved, a monthly fee? Is it do they rent that? How does that actually work? What's the plan there?
The guys who are designing it on our team, Sung Cho is overseeing our entire dev team. He's pretty adamant about charging a fee, a monthly service fee associated with having this level 2 and possibly level 3 type quoting and messaging systems. We haven't formally announced what we want to do in terms of the fees associated with using that platform, because we've been paying for this stuff out of pocket up to this point, and the development is very robust and secure. So in terms of what that fee is going to be, we're not sure yet. It hasn't been finalized.
Right. Okay. Well, if we could talk about the token now itself. Obviously, it's highly complex by design. It involves a significant number of elements, and 3 of them have been mentioned. So in terms of its function, its primary 3, it references payments, it references market-efficient mechanisms, and its tradability in cryptocurrency. So, if you could explain a little bit more about those points and why it's so integral, and then talk of the benefits of it itself, of the token, and what it's actually going to do.
Sure, Jonathan, you want to give a stab?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start. Let's both cover it. So I think the analogy, maybe we'd like to look at is something like a Binance, and that that's use for payment within their ecosystem. This will be used for payments and fees within our ecosystem. At probably some kind of a discounted manner, but our ecosystem and our offerings are going to grow. I mean, geez, you can see we're starting off with a pretty full plate, right?
Right.
You read the
yes.
Yeah.
Right. White paper. Yeah.
We're not afraid to take on some really big things, and it wouldn't surprise me if as we tackle these and get good at and even more proficient at what we've already started to tackle, that our offerings get even more robust and larger. And so the ecosystem itself, I think, is going to grow over time to something substantial. In terms of the FX component, I'm super excited about that. So just to have like the ability to be a world leader in remittance, payments, exchange and value through a fiat reference like that. Yes, there's going to be a small transaction fee, out of which the hybrid token will be a potentially necessary part of that.
Right.
So there's a bunch of different use cases for it, and I think the use cases are just going to continue to grow as our company grows.
Absolutely. So just referring back to that for you, Apolo, in terms of its the market efficient mechanism itself, that's an important component that was referenced in the white paper. Just, what essentially is that when we reference that as the market efficient mechanism, and how does it relate to the token?
Sure. So just like gas and fees and services that are associated with using our token on our platform, we believe market efficient mechanisms in terms of how this is paired with many other different types of technologies is also important. So our goal is to get our token listed on many other exchanges and many other pairings as well on our own exchange.
Right.
So that's one way, and we see that kind of market efficient mechanism being utilized. Something that we haven't talked about, excuse me, that we think is something that's very interesting is how do we incorporate some governance models associated with our token? And what I mean by that is look at the Dash Treasury model. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but I've been following the Dash Treasury model for a long time. Big fan of how that incorporates the community engagement to a level of degree that's it's astronomical. It's incredible. So we've been talking about the idea of setting up a hybrid treasury fund, and given the approval from our legal team, obviously first and foremost, but if they give us the approval, we want to set up a hybrid treasury fund. And what this fund consists of is, imagine a small, tiny fraction a sliver of every single microtransaction that happens on the exchange, a small amount of hybrid tokens then gets deposited into the hybrid treasury fund automatically. And then every month, people can utilize their own hybrid tokens and showcase them and say, look, I want to have and submit a proposal for an idea set of what the hybrid treasury fund should be used for. That could be to list new tokens, to have community management, to do more community marketing, to do a new partnership, whatever that is. That idea set, again, approval from our legal team, who's really kind of guiding us through this process, will allow us to have a level of community engagement that is really, really high bar. And I really love the idea set behind it, because we as community, we want to be able to have a say in some capacity. At least our voices are heard, or we can submit ideas around how we believe the direction of the company should go, because the community is everything and every single component of what we build at Hybrid Exchange.
Absolutely, and it's also, the fundamental aspect of the decentralized, nature of blockchain. So it fits in well there. Sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
No, my apologies. I was just going to say that we can't also rule out the possibility that, much like, Ethereum, geez, it's got such an amazing use case, right? But it's also got a store of value. There's a perception of a store of value and an actual exchange of value independent of its use case. In a wildly dreamy scenario for us, our token gets that same sort of store of value. As our brand increases in the world, as our footprint in the cryptocurrency world increases, we would hope that we would gain that sort of notoriety too.
Well, let's talk about that in a moment specifically, because I want to talk about that in context of securities versus utilities. Because obviously there's a transition happening now. There's a lot of pressure being put on from the SEC. We're going to talk about that. But just in terms of your specific token, how would you regard it in that context?
Jonathan, this is your specialty.
We spend so much time talking about
this. Because it is such an important
one
right now. So it's important to raise
I know. And, we're a utility token. It's we're definitely avoiding taking investors from jurisdictions like the U.S. where it's a big issue.
Yeah.
There's just no way to diminish that. We started this process a really long time ago, or these guys did, before I ever showed up. And lots change. Things change every day. So but yeah, I mean, that is an issue. We want to be respectful in the jurisdictions in which we're operating, in the jurisdictions in which we're accepting, funds for tokens, that we're remaining. I'm a stickler for compliance, and having worked at banks forever, compliance kind of runs the show, and I'm driving Apollo and Rod crazy with all my compliance conversation probably, but look, that is a big deal, and it's a conversation that we have a lot.
So
yeah,
of course, please do.
I think, look, 2017 was the year of insanity in terms of the ICO market. Sorry, you could have thrown a dart into any ICO, and you would have been incredibly happy with the amount of percentage of returns that have occurred. The game has changed now. The game is different, and regulatory is at the forefront of every company who's serious in this space, and should be. We believe that embracing regulatory environments is critical. We believe that we are a utility, all of our legal team, and we have a very big legal team, very big, from the US to being based in New York to Denver to Hong Kong and Singapore. We've consulted with what we consider to be the absolute professionals in the space on if we are a utility. We absolutely believe we are a utility, and we will continuously come up with great ideas to further the use case of our utility. But make no mistake, security tokens are coming. They're coming strong, and they're going to be big, and they're going to be very important, but they're also not going to allow the retail consumer. And that's a huge population of people that we feel need to have exposure in some capacity to the cryptocurrency sphere, and we want to service these individuals, and we want to give them an opportunity to understand what cryptocurrency is, and perhaps they can't get into that security token, or it's out of their reach in terms of how much they can participate in. And we believe that these people need to be serviced in some capacity, and that's where our hybrid exchange model and base rate comes in space.
Right. Well, let's talk about that a bit more, because obviously there's a very robust decentralized model coming. And you both, I'm sure, would know through the DEX, but specifically through the NEO ecosystem, there's one called the NEX, the Neon Exchange. And I was speaking with Fabio, who was the CEO yesterday, and he was explaining that they are actually going to move over to a securitized model. They're going to actually one of the very first to be recognized as a security. So does it concern you that there are decentralized mechanisms and models for these kind of exchanges moving across into that space that are going across to securities?
No, I'll jump on this one, Jonathan. I commend the NEO team. I'm a big fan of what those guys do.
Yeah.
I think they are hyper intelligent. They've got a great team. They consistently pump out incredible technologies. Are we concerned about the decentralized model? Not at all. When the speeds are able to reach what they are needed in the trading sphere, we will look at a decentralized model of an exchange, and we will continuously push that bar. But to be quite blunt, it's not even close right now. It's simply not even close. And you can't imagine a large group of institution-grade traders trying to utilize a decentralized trading system. It doesn't exist. It's not fast enough. It's not robust enough. It's not secure enough. And I can tell you firsthand that there's no government in the world who is going to allow the operation of an exchange in their country or give them a stamp of approval if they are not complying with the existing compliance that exists. That's just the reality. And as much as we would love to have a complete decentralized world in which everything is frictionless and has no middlemen, the idea set is beautiful and it's incredibly important. But right now, it's not accessible because of the existing regulatory body and oversight that is going to be coming in this space. And I think it's our duty as an exchange operator, along with all the other people who are in the space, to communicate effectively with the existing regulatory environment and government heads to say, look, guys, we embrace regulation in the right way. We believe in protection in terms of people getting hurt in the space. However, let's do it in a way that doesn't overregulate, because if you overregulate, there's millions of people who are then shut out immediately and they no longer have access, and companies can fail. So I think for us, we embrace regulation head on. Our legal team meets with the regulatory body every week, either in person or on the phone, to get updates and insight into what's happening in terms of the space and what type of changes that are occurring. But in terms of decentralized, I love it. I absolutely am a big proponent of what the idea set is. However, from a trading perspective specifically, it's not there yet, and it's not ready yet.
Okay, so you've mentioned two key points, and that is the KYC element and also scalability. So just in that respect, you've also referenced previously in your recent interview with Ohno Madi about the scalability issues with regard to your engine as well. So your matching engine is quite sophisticated. But let's talk about that in the context of off-chain matching engines that are offered to redress some of these concerns that some of these decentralized exchanges are bringing to the market. Clearly, they are also looking at KYC, quite honestly. They are finding ways in which they can try and link with blockchains that specifically are based on KYC provisions. So that is a wave that is coming, no doubt. But are you suggesting that your scalability and your KYC solutions are more advanced?
I don't know if we're more advanced because I'm not really familiar with what type of KYC AML verification processes those guys are utilizing. We will always use the same type of banking level KYC AML processes that are compliant in every single legal jurisdiction. That's across the board. I don't think there's anything more that you can do with that other than just make it as fast as possible. And the different technology partners that we have who handle that third party, we think are some of the best in the world. However, it's kind of a case by case scenario. In terms of scalability, our matching engine, we're very proud of. It's been proven many times over. We know that we can continuously improve upon that and make it faster and faster and more robust. However, the current market as it stands right now, we believe at its absolute peak will only be using 2%, maybe 3% of our matching engine capability. So just to give you kind of an insight into how much power we think we have in terms of the transactional speed and volume. Now, again, we're very early in the space.
Yes.
true high frequency traders haven't really been deployed yet. And when that day comes, it's going to be a sad day for many retail investors because they simply are not going to be able to compete. However, we as an entity and as a corporation plan to facilitate and service all that come.
I see. Well, let's talk about, yeah, very much did. And if we can talk about, again, you referenced Terminal before, about prototypes, because that's obviously very important for the consumer, for anyone who wants to know about Hybridblock. You have to have some sort of evidence with a demo at the very least. So how is all that going in the dev department? So,
you know, we were just talking about this before on the previous interview.
Yes.
And, you know, it's almost like I wish we could have a documentary crew kind of follow around the different locations of the people that we have in our organizations and really see how hard everyone works and just the crazy amount of brain power, the midnight conference calls, all the stuff that goes on. You know, I mean, meanwhile, Apollo's out there announcing the Olympics on top of it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You know, the dev guys are so stretched. Like it would take a considerable amount of the resources to produce something to our standards of a demo, I guess. I think that's kind of the point of that. You know, we were able to generate in the last interview we just did, and I think that unfortunately we don't want to pull them off their job of producing the product because we don't want to. You know, we want to attempt to come forward with over delivering and not the other way around. So
sure, but just respectfully though, in terms of updates, it's essential, obviously, given right. Thank you.
It's coming, Brad. It's coming. We have videos. I've got my dev team recording themselves, going through the process in the terminal. We actually just had, with our technology partners, we just did a brief run through and a demo. Jonathan, I think you were on that call. This was maybe 3 or 4 days ago. It looks beautiful. We're changing some user interface things right now, but make no mistake, the products are nearly complete. Now, the hybrid terminal takes a lot more time because there's a lot more moving parts than the straight up exchanges. So those guys were still shooting for I call it a mid-May date in terms of releasing that beta. Right. But the actual exchange is going to be, we believe it's going to be live in mid-April. That's the target date right now. So in terms of updates, and I know everyone wants to see these things happen, they're coming. I assure you, I'm pushing my guys to continuously keep updating some of the stuff. Now, I've got one thing to mention. A lot of our team is all over the world. So right now I'm in Korea. Jonathan's in LA. Rod is in Vancouver. I believe that Carson and Jeff were just in Texas for a crypto conference, and they're heading over to India.
Yes.
So
I've actually made notes on your team. So
Philippines, and we've got a lot of different guys kind of going a million miles an hour. But I hear it. I hear you guys. The videos are coming. The updates are coming. Keep pushing me. Keep pushing us. Keep reminding us.
One thing that it does become clear, obviously, in the privilege of my role, is that the quality blockchains and the projects that I do hear about take their time. And clearly that's what you're doing. So you're trying to balance the best of both worlds. So you have the audience here, including myself, who wants to know about these very exciting developments. And obviously Jonathan's articulated that everyone is doing the best they can. But by the same token, you are also trying to make sure they're done well before they're released. So it's an interesting balance. So just in that respect, though, you referenced some teams. And I do want to address this because in the literature that I did read through, I tried to isolate the skill sets of your team. And the predominance was, in areas such as banking, obviously Jonathan can attest to that, your entrepreneurial roles, stock market, business, government, and developers were actually quite thin in the information I could find. So where can we learn more about the significant developing team that you have? Because it was difficult to find.
Sure, those guys are, and I'm not sure if the website is updated yet, but we just got confirmation that everyone has updated the LinkedIn profiles. I got to tell you, most of our dev guys, they don't have LinkedIn. They don't utilize them. They never have. They're one particular group of 12 guys, core being the core 6. They live in Kiev, and they have no. For them, their LinkedIn profile gives them no extra business because all their existing clients were basically referral and word of mouth. But I hear you. I understand it's something that is required from the community. They want to see it, and it's coming. They set up their accounts. We'll be listing these things that are coming on there, and it'll give confidence because make you guys look. At the end of the day, I'm not the one who's going to be running the exchange architecture because I don't understand it to the level of professionalism these guys do. Neither does Jonathan.
Right.
But these guys, they're professionals.
And we really appreciate you saying that, because obviously we're considering that as, someone who's trying to understand better the hybrid block system. We want to make sure and ensure that there are people who can actually run it.
Yes,
we're glad that you can
absolutely.
confirm there are people that exist out there that are going to do that.
Yes. Andre and Sergey and the rest of the teams are phenomenal.
Right.
Yeah, I can actually see here if they updated some of their stuff. Let me just take a look.
I could add it in later if you want, Apollo. I'll find that information for you.
Yeah.
But if we could talk a bit more about the hybrid FX, that's probably the most complex and the most fundamental aspect of the whole design you bring to the, I guess, the centralized exchange table. So you have essentially 3 layers, and Ethereum's involved in that. Can you talk us through a little bit about why Ethereum's important right now to your design?
Sure. Yeah. So look, Ethereum is fast. It's been proven. It's been utilized by nearly every single ICO out there. Although you take into consideration the new Neo projects and the EOS projects, which were still, by the way, still accepting ERC20 tokens and still operating as such. Mm-hmm. However, we believe in Vitalik's vision and his team. We've got some really good information in terms of why we should be building our platform in accordance with that ERC20 token, in terms of the hybrid token, et cetera. But in terms of utilizing Ethereum, it's fast, it's proven, and we know that there's going to be improvements in other areas of cryptocurrencies, but it's something that we feel the most comfortable with, and our dev team is also the most comfortable with utilizing. So that's really the primary answer to why we chose Ethereum versus others. But make no mistake, and I know that it's complex in its kind of explanation, but it's actually quite simple, right? Mm-hmm. So our hybrid FX model is country specific. Mm-hmm. So Hong Kong dollar, HFX, Singapore dollar, HFX, Australian dollar, HFX. And what we believe is every country's got a very specific insight in terms of how its native currency should be paired and utilized. Also, how the banking system in every single country is very unique from one another. They all require you to have a certain level of compliance that are associated and speed getting in and out of that system. But most importantly, for the consumer and front facing, providing a radically transparent audit that is ongoing and available to see from all the people who are out there. So look, I think with Tether and kind of the common misconception, right. Who knows what's happening really with the system. A lot of my friends are telling me they believe there's nothing wrong with the existing Tether model and it's not broken and every dollar can be accounted for. That's what they keep telling me. So, look, I believe my friends. They've been involved in that space for a long time. However, we want to give people another option, and another option should be, I want to have complete radical transparency. Show me that there's an ongoing third-party audit from one of the big 4 accounting firms that tells me that there is actual reserve of that dollar that's in the bank. I don't want the same type of fractional reserve currency that we've seen in the past with banking systems. We want to show that every dollar in is every dollar that's there.
Absolutely.
And that's
so just in that yes, it very much does. And just, Jonathan, I'm sure you could articulate on this point, how important is the fiat pegging and that component of your design to have fiat involved?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a marketplace that's independent of crypto. It's bigger than crypto in the sense that unless crypto overtakes fiat, which in case we're involved in both, so that's great.
Right.
But if you think about it, you've got families in the Philippines that are getting money from their relatives overseas, working on Carnival Cruise Lines. Well, think of all the steps you have to go through to get money to your relatives. Where if you could simply transfer it from your wallet to theirs, and it becomes a trusted source for that transfer, and there's a real confidence by the users that the reserves are true and actually there, then there's no need. You can have a mechanism for them to be able to exchange it at an actual bank, but when people trust that it's actually there, then they don't need to do that, and then merchants can begin accepting the payment in the digital format, and then hybrid becomes a central source for merchant use, for remittance of all sorts of like I said, the families sending money back home. Any number of use cases pop up, including overall society, and then it all bases on our I think it's a fairly simple delivery mechanism of being able to show that the money's there and
Right.
doing that on a very regular basis. I mean, I really don't think it should be that hard to do.
Mm. But
If it's
obviously,
there,
one of the issues we find, though, is that currently it is challenging to do, certainly in the US as one example. We're hearing many stories, including in my country, Australia, whereby many banks are actually blockading. There's a blockade there. There's a barrier in which people can transfer fiat into, the crypto space. So how are you going to sort of address these concerns again, talking about fiat and the provisions you're going to provide for that transaction to happen?
Yeah, so there's the initial barrier of the facing client to bring in fiat, which is different from the tether type model of the HFX, right?
Right.
So they're kind of two different things, because when the client has their initial interface and brings fiat into the crypto world, that's one thing. And you're absolutely right that it's becoming harder and harder. Banks are de-risking all over the place,
right.
And throw the word blockchain out there. I mean, probably you got blockchain and right before your first name.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
it's
already problematic.
I don't admit that when you try to open your checking account, but they are definitely becoming the scrutiny is getting higher and higher. And look, I worked at a bank at J.P. Morgan, where my CEO told me that I'd get fired if I traded Bitcoin.
Right.
And not to segue off this too much. I know you like to keep things tight.
That's okay.
But that spoke to me some, and not in the way you think, because I said to myself, why is he having such a visceral reaction to this? I mean, who gets that upset over it? It's because there's a threat, right? This threatens the system. We want to be able to be a bridge for both systems. It was kind of where our ambitions lie in terms of this, the offering for HFX. If the reserves themselves are there, then people can digitally transfer assets and be comfortable that it represents what the underlying. And that's really what we want to be able to offer. And in addition to just being a low vol product for traders that want to go kind of risk neutral while they're sleeping or something.
Right.
We want it more to be a world-changing digital asset offering of remittance and easy transference amongst society.
Sure, and clearly that's what's going to be happening as the market grows and as adoption becomes more mainstream. Clearly, KYC is the fundamental step to that as well, and we're still seeing that currently in 2018. But if we could talk about now, gentlemen, the user interface once more. What's the roadmap like for people to go and access the mobile apps and that sort of thing? What's that looking like?
Well, people can download the, I guess you can call it, test version of Hybrid Central now, which is the education platform, and play around with it. It's not populated. It hasn't been updated in some time. The actual other platforms, we're still shooting for the base trade model and the hybrid exchange a mid-April date. That is our target. Okay. And people can utilize and access that platform from there. In the meantime, hopefully we'll have some updated videos for people to see our progress along the way. And then the hybrid terminal, we believe, is a mid-May for that release.
I see.
And we believe the first two platforms, the base trade and the hybrid exchange, we're shooting to have them fully operational and available via mobile at the same time.
Right. And obviously you've got another date, important one coming up. I think it's March 15, and that is your ICOs coming up. Yes. Obviously, that's very important for those who are looking into your project. But let's talk about that in more the token sense. My understanding is that trying to raise $50 million. Is that correct in your ICO?
Correct.
So are you concerned about that number? We often hear these kind of numbers, and people raise their eyebrows to them. Let's talk about that briefly in the context of the climate now, and also let's talk about, more importantly, I would argue that this is fundamental too, and that is how you're going to, essentially distribute your own tokens by design, and whether or not you've catered for things like development in your token distribution as well. So first one, let's talk about the 50 million, then we'll talk about your distribution.
Can I talk about 50 million and you talk about the distribution, Apollo? Is that okay?
Sure.
The reason why is because I'm kind of new to this area, right? Mm-hmm. And I've watched all these people, folks having reactions to the cap including the one you just said. And it seems to me like there's just these sort of artificial numbers that have been laid out by, professionals and retail investors in the space that, if it's over X, then it's too much, or, where I come from, what matters more is what you're going to deliver for the capital that you're seeking. Mm-hmm. What your intent of delivery is. It's not, how much are you seeking? I mean, in Wall Street, if you're asking for $500 million, well, how are the investors going to get paid? What does that mean? So that's way more important of a question than, okay, well, this has to be a loser project because they're asking for more than 30 million. Like, I just think it's a head scratcher for me. We have a vision that's so large in scale. It's much larger in scale than anything I've personally seen. And then, on top of that, the team is super strong, and they've already spent a lot of money. These guys have put in tons of money already before we even got to this point. And that's also unique. That's why we're so close to being at a launch around the time of the ICO.
So clearly, what essentially you're saying, you're making a counter argument of value for money and for longitudinal value. Whereas what we're currently looking at now in terms of the space, we're seeing many people look for a quick buck grab, because we're so used to a very volatile market whereby it's such a fast-paced industry that there really can be smaller caps, and people can certainly make huge gains in a very rapid period of time. But it is interesting to hear you say, from your experience in the banking industry particularly, that's just not the way that typically business works.
That's right. And we're business people. Unlike a lot of the folks doing ICOs, maybe hate to say, we're all experienced business people in our own rights. We've started, established, and been involved in various types of businesses. And we want to build an amazing brand and a large and scalable, world-changing brand. So I think, the cap thing is just, like I said, it's been a head scratcher for me.
Right, and I think I was going to say, it's so important that we address this now, because I think, Apolo, you were mentioning this before, it's likely that we're going to see ICOs transition and change, simply because, there's a huge, as you mentioned, with the 2017 year, a dream run. But we're already seeing this transition, and I think that'll give credence to what you're saying, Jonathan, because gradually we'll see things stabilize and become more normalized in this space. Would you argue that's on the right track, Apolo?
Yeah, I think every major correction is actually healthy. I think what happens is you see the higher quality projects, and look, 2018 has been filled with significantly higher quality projects than 2017 was, right, in terms of what the community is expecting, what the hard caps are. And these are numbers that are usually associated with individuals who are trying to maximize their return on their investment. Right. That's what those metrics are really revolving around. Now, I love guys who are measuring these metrics and are plugging spreadsheets together, because if they're not doing it, who's doing it for us, right? Because I definitely am not spending the time doing the analytics and the revision. But however, I have to make a point that a blanketed metric system to judge based upon website criteria and information on the internet is very difficult to give an unbiased opinion that is qualified from technology to technology, from company to company. You never compare the quality of a plumbing company to that of a company who specializes in iPhone parts. They're totally different in every single entirety. Right. So I think that consideration has to be made when looking at these different technologies and companies. Our goal and plan is to be a major player in this space, not just this year, but in 10 years. And whatever that outcome looks like in the next 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 years, we have to evolve as a company and as an entity. We had a hard cap at 60 million. We decreased it to 50 million because we said, look, let's see, how do we figure out a way that the community feels very comfortable with the project that we've got, but they also understand the long term and the breadth and the depth of what we're trying to build is going to require us to utilize these funds appropriately. Right. Coinbase, as a perfect example, raised over $200 million US. They've got 14 million accounts. We plan on having 100 million new users adopting into the cryptocurrency sphere.
Right.
So just to give you some perspective in terms of our market efficiency mechanisms that lie in terms of how we're utilizing those funds and how our existing funds we've utilized in-house, how are they going to come into play, and how we can mitigate some of the risks normally associated with pouring money on top of a problem when there's a big fire, instead of making sure there's no fire from the beginning and you can scale accordingly. So all these different kind of elements we look at from a business perspective, but I hear the community. I don't like to invest in high cap deals myself unless I see high quality individuals, high quality projects, and a vision of plan that's normally associated. It's difficult to provide metrics in a blanketed system. How do you measure someone's relationship with someone who created all of the Patriot Act financing in 2001, 2002 for the United States?
Right.
If it's never talked about. I mean, that's these types of relationships and government entities and conversations sometimes are difficult to have into a spreadsheet. So although I respect wholeheartedly the spreadsheet model and idea set by Maddie and by Belina and other social media influencers, and it's difficult, right? So I urge people who are questioning our cap, meet us at one of the conferences.
Right.
Come to our channel. Let's talk about it, because I have an explanation for you, and I believe it's valid. I believe it's reasonable, and at the end of the day, we will deliver the products that we say we're going to deliver. And I think with the type of resources we have, we can have just incredible experiences across the way. So
I think, Apollo, you raise a very important point. I mean, in a typical scenario, let's talk about someone like Warren Buffett. You know, people fly all around the world to go to his AGM every year. You know, and they'll listen to some of these updates. And it's no different to what you're suggesting, in that perhaps we need to think a little bit more proleptically and look more ahead at the vision that you provide and that you're offering, and not solely just on the metrics, as you say. Because, you know, if we went down and looked at a white paper of Google, for example, no one would invest in that. No one would understand that. And that's the anomaly we're talking about now, is that we're expected to understand the fundamentals of your vision on a white paper, which can't be written because some of the vision's still in play. It's still being designed. So it's very interesting what you're saying. It's very interesting. Because that's the challenge from both sides at the moment. But if we could talk about now your distribution, I did want to mention that briefly, and only on the point of development, because it's a big point that you raised, that you want to really bolster that aspect of your design. But just in the distribution itself, it seems there hasn't been much set aside for that. So how are you going to sort of fund it?
Sure. So our development team has been funded from the beginning out of pocket for quite a long time. And so we feel comfortable, but we're also going to scale that. A significant portion of our funds is going to be head towards customer service, scaling, other adoption of other existing exchanges or technology. With the hybrid exchange, there's a liquidity component associated with what we're doing. So the reason why we have a one-stop shop, I think that's the word that you used earlier, was that you come to our platform, you get access to many different altcoins that we don't currently list on our platform, and we can clear those trades for you. Well, the only way we can do that is if we park money with those exchanges. The reason why those exchanges don't care is because we act as a big client to that exchange, and that exchange still books it as their own volume. That's very important to understand. So people always ask us, why would so-and-so exchange want to be associated and allow you to do this? Well, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, because they're still booking their own exchange. They're still getting and making their own fee associated. Hopefully that conversation and that fee will drastically go down over time because of the volume we're providing to the exchange and the liquidity. However, if I place $5 million on 5 different top exchanges, that's $25 million right there. $5 million account on an exchange is not a big account. So that's just giving you some context in terms of when thinking about these different distribution of how funds are allocated. Everything that we utilize is going to be for ongoing marketing, ongoing support, security of the platform. We're playing around with the idea of having some type of insurance mechanism. It hasn't been solidified yet, but we are trying to play around with the idea of, especially for the base trade model, of how we can incorporate something to give the consumer better understanding and also some security to feel that they have a little bit less to lose per se if they pay a fee associated, kind of like an overdraft fee associated with the banking system. So all these different ideas, I'm scouring the earth, trying to get new people on board. I'm trying to hire more additions to our CTO team and CIO team, and I'm always continuously looking to improve. So a large component of these funds is really towards not only just development, because we believe we have enough to do the development, but really it's in terms of scaling the product and on the back end side, making sure the government relationships are appropriate, making sure that we have all the customer service that is associated, making sure we can handle the ticket requests, because we know we're going to run into problems. It's how we mitigate those risks when those times come is how we're going to win.
And absolutely. And I think the main point I wanted to clarify with you is that you have a plan for the future in terms of revenue to try and service these aspects, to look at the development side so that you're not out of pocket, by design as you have been. And clearly you're going to utilize some of that revenue to continue and sustain this growth.
Yeah, and I think that, it's like a dream of mine is to create in linear, when we grow as a company, we will have, whatever side fund that we create in ongoing in linear development is to create a super exchange. Mm-hmm. And by a super exchange, I mean, imagine a one place you can go to and you can trade equities and stocks and bonds and REITs and crypto and all these different asset classes now under one house that communicates with Tokyo to London to New York to Hong Kong to Shanghai, all in one place that simultaneously has all the compliance, all the jurisdiction, all the different kind of legal framework that exists. I imagine that's the direction in the world that we're going to go to. We're going to have one universal system in which you can trade everything across the board. Right. And hopefully we can provide that platform in some capacity. Right.
If we could talk about now, move across to your very, very open country, very dynamic country of the US. Ironically, it's you're precluded from operating entirely in your own country. Is that correct at the moment?
We're not precluded from operating. It's going to take us time to receive the necessary licenses to operate as such, like a Coinbase would, for example. So we wouldn't dare operate in our country until we have the necessary approvals and all 50 state transmission licenses that are required to conduct business in the way that we want to conduct business in the United States. And so for that being, in addition to just a lack of true regulatory understanding, although we've got a great team based out of Boston, New York, who tell us what's happening, we want to wait until we're fully and duly prepared before we go into the American market and try to attack it in the same way that we would attack the rest of the Asian markets, because we feel more comfortable.
Sure, and that's great to hear, obviously, for an investor to know that you are, certainly waiting for that to happen. But how optimistic are you, Jonathan, that that's going to happen in a reasonably expedited process? Do you think that's on the agenda right now of governments, particularly yours?
I'll say a few things about that, and one is that when you're dealing with regulators, you're way better off asking for permission than forgiveness, because that's because of that, you're on their timeline, and their timeline, it doesn't always match with business timelines. You know what I mean? So it's something I spend an incredible amount of time discussing within the group. Maybe they'd say too much, but I just we want to be very, very careful, to do things the right way. Do things in a way that we're not going to even be in the gray area if possible. We just want to be as upfront and transparent as we can in general. But when it comes to regulatory, that's a very, very large component of what we want to do. So sure. We're going to operate in areas that maybe we can get better clarity.
Right. And what was interesting, obviously, recently is there seems to be a bit of a transition from the general conversation of if moving across to when with regard to compliance. And actually what's interesting also is recently there's been a lot of discussion at the governmental level about more things like applications of the blockchain and like, obviously even in this context with centralized models of exchange, rather than, even compliance itself, because it's almost a given now. If you look at the commission discussions and the hearings, they're already moving across to discussions of, how do we use it? How do we grapple with this? Have you found that as well?
Well, I think that's also really telling and important, because the more people let their guard down and realize that it's not the big bad enemy that's going to, threaten anything, it's really a nice natural progression of technology. Then I think the more we'll be able to work with regulators to help craft regulations. We want to, instead of even sitting around waiting, we want to be leaders in the space of working with regulators. There's a self-regulatory organization beginning, I think, out of London, and I think that's great. let's be proactive in the space, rather than reactive even. So hope that answers the question.
It does, but just at the top down level, obviously, Apollo, when you're hearing this conversation being had by government sectors, and representatives, surely that's a boon to your business. When you're hearing that in the media.
I think from the crypto community, they traditionally have viewed the government as being very resistant to crypto assets in general. I think that's been the general consensus amongst our community, but I think it's quite the contrary. And via our conversations from individuals, ourselves, our team, or our friends who've had sit-down discussions, open, completely transparent, hey, look, off the record, let's just speak our minds. They're really, really warm, and they're really interested, partially because they understand you can't stop this train.
Right.
This thing is too strong. And the only way for governments to really understand of maintaining their power and control is to embrace it in a way and say, look, how do we work together to make sure you can still flourish and we can still maintain, kind of solidarity and control in some capacity to protect the average consumer and still operate within the legal jurisdictions and laws and guidelines that we want to set forth. So, top down, I think people are open. Some are not. Some are very old school and archaic in their mindset. They come from the old guard and they feel threatened and they feel worried and they scoff at crypto and they say, oh, this is nothing but it's garbage and this is not going to happen. And look, every man and every woman to their own opinion, but you cannot detract from mathematics and technology and the ever resounding voice that the community has. And the more people that adopt this voice, the more powerful we become. And it's not like we're trying to overthrow anybody. We just simply want to have an understanding of how we can operate cleanly, efficiently, and for everybody, whether you are a fisherman in the Philippines or you are an iBanker or you're a hedge fund guy ripping $100 million a month in profit. Everyone has their own specific path in life, and as long as you have the opportunity to participate, that's the goal. And we just want to be a facilitator of that trade to make sure that we can actively and communicatively talk to everybody, whether they're the retail investor or they're the professional trader. Absolutely.
I think that's really well said. Now, if we could talk about your partners, because that's a key aspect that everyone looks at. So we won't talk, you did discuss this with Oh Hey Matty, so I won't go into them in detail, but they can be found on the website, guys, if you want to look into them. But I did want to talk more about prospective partners that haven't been perhaps discussed so much. Because with every great project, you try and generate more income, more revenue, and more and expand. So let's talk about how you're going to do that.
Sure. Well, Jonathan can kind of speak about this a little bit because he recently came with me on a trip to Asia. I won't say which specific country, but
I'd love it if you did.
Yeah. So we sat down with some great representatives in Singapore, in Labuan, Malaysia, in the Philippines, in Hong Kong, and even some of our partners who are based in Hong Kong, but they have a lot of insight into mainland China, to discuss about ways in which we can operate cleanly and fairly. And so in terms of partners and existing crypto partners, there's many. Right. There's many that we want to have conversations with. And it's all the names that you know of. None of these guys are under the radar unless they're a government entity or unless it's a banking relationship or a payment services provider or something in that regard. Everybody else, you guys know of the big players who we're trying to talk to and we're trying to have partnerships with. And whether they are an exchange, whether they're a protocol layer level technology, we're having these conversations. But I think it's not our place to say until these formalized partnerships are set in stone. And I think we'd like to keep them kind of closely held to the chest until those times are ready.
I think it's a very wise decision to do. And I think what we want to know is to make sure that you are having those discussions.
Yeah, we are. And I got to tell you, it's never easy because everyone is super busy and everyone who's good is head down, focused on the projects. That's what's happening. And sometimes I find myself really detracting away from the community and just being cut off and just saying, this is what we got to do, step A, B, C, D, E, and then realizing, hey, there's a million other things that I have to handle at the same time. So these conversations are interesting and everyone has their own take in terms of how they view us, whether as competitors or as threats or as potential partners and allies. So our approach, just so the community understands, that we view everyone as an ally in this space, and we always try to find ways in which we can work together, regardless of what type of technology similarities that exist.
I see. Well, that's exciting that you are having those discussions and that you're optimistic about really building out. Now, Jonathan, if we could talk about the roadmap, when we have talked about so much today, but if you could tell us maybe one thing perhaps, and then move across to Apolo, that's in the roadmap that you can think of between now and, let's say, the end of the year, that's really just stand out for you in the plan, what would it be?
Oh, man.
Just as one big thing, you know. I'm going to fry your brain after two interviews.
Some really big initiatives, but I mean, the thing that could change the world is the FX platform. You know, I think that's something where we could change the way money is perceived and transferred. That's pretty amazing. If I could have my slight, tiny bit of imprint on a change of society like that, oh man, that would be great.
Right. And Apolo, what about you? What would be a standout for you in the plan this year?
Well, I'm really excited about the launch of our products, Brad. I think that's what I'm the most excited about. And then in conjunction is the educational component. I'm really excited about. We've got some really cool partnerships we're going to be announcing later this year about some guys who are doing some really cool educational blockchain and crypto related educational programs that they focus on solely as a business that we're creating some partnerships with. And so I want the mass public to just become educated about crypto assets and about blockchain technology, even at the simplistic form. No one has to be a master, core developer of any of these products. I think we just have to understand how these things impact society, and that I have a chance to participate in owning a piece of that token. And even if it's a fractional nominal amount, it's okay. You're in the space, you're in the game, you have a say, your voice is not being blown in the wind, you're a part of the community. And I think that's a very powerful component that I'm really, really excited and blessed to be a part of. And so that's this year for us is, those starting with that launch date, and then, fingers crossed that we're smooth and operating and everything is going exactly the way we want.
Well, currently already it seems like you're already ahead of the game with your own roadmap and you're already achieving some of those milestones. What is exciting also, and I think it's important to raise, given that you've explained you're excited about the education, is that if you did walk down the street now and you wanted to discuss blockchain, the majority of people would not have a clue about what you're talking about. And so, again, there's another reason for the need. There's clearly a dire need for more education at a very, at the best quality level you can provide, and that's what you're aiming to do. With that, then comes mass adoption, eventually, but only if we have educational facilities like your platform. So, again, are you aware of many other competitors that are sort of trying to do something similar in a centralized space?
In terms of the education platform?
Yeah.
They're not a competitor. They're actually going to be a partner of ours. I'm not going to say the name, but yes, I know one other.
That. We'd love it if you said the name.
Yeah, I know one other, and I'll mention their name shortly and soon. And they've been ripping and roaring, and they've got a lot of support from the community. So we're excited to announce them. And I think that from an educational based perspective, they're going to be great. One thing to note is one guy in our team, Michael Sung, Dr. Michael Sung, who is a big technology strategist for us, chief strategist officer for Asia Pacific. He speaks frequently at some of the mainland Chinese forums and universities on the topic of technology adoption and now blockchain.
Right.
And so he was at Davos in Switzerland on behalf of Hybridblock, and he was courting about 25 major Chinese institution grade investors from the mainland about blockchain and crypto, and it was the hottest topic. And so it comes with education.
Yes.
You talk about the population densities of some of these Asian regions. All it takes is a little spark that happens and people start to learn a little bit more and they realize how cool and incredible these technologies are. And we're just at the very, very beginning of this thing. So that's where it starts is the education side. And it's a big component. And I'd love to gain feedback from the community on ways that we can improve that if they see ways and ways that they can contribute as well, because we'd love to have that voice associated inside of our modules and platform in the community section.
Sure. And also to do that, I mean, where's the best place to go and access information? You know, for the layperson who hasn't perhaps heard of Hybridblock, where could they go?
Well, I sent them to the website first. Hybridblock.io is our website, or join our Telegram channel, which is growing. Which, by the way, I'm so blessed and excited because we've done zero marketing, and we're like nearing 3,500 people on a Telegram channel, which is like beyond me because we haven't even tried to really do anything in terms of marketing yet. But that's coming soon.
Well, your face would be a marketing, ploy, wouldn't it? Be the 8-time Olympian. That's marketing in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes, but I don't know. Some of the new millennials, my first Olympic Games was 16 years ago. I don't think some of these kids they were like maybe 3 years old, right?
Right, sure. Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
good thing I had a long career.
To tell you the truth, it's been an absolute privilege to talk to both of you today. I've learned a great deal about Hybridblock, certainly a lot more than I didn't know before. Just to summarize some of these things. Clearly, you are a centralized exchange. You are going to integrate fiat into your system. You're going to make sure that people can interact in a global sense once things that KYC is established. You're certainly going to utilize the experience of a very broad network of developers that we do not know so much about yet, but we will. So there's so much more to come, which is the exciting component, I suppose, of Hybridblock for this year, next year, and many years ahead. So on behalf of all the people who are hoping to learn more, to access more of Hybridblock, I do thank you very much for your time today. And I hope it's okay that we can follow you along and interact more, perhaps do more interviews in the future. But for now, it's been a privilege. Thank you so much to Apolo Ohno for your experience in many areas, particularly, given that it's the Olympics as well. It's almost like an Olympic movement in the blockchain as well right now. So thank you for leading the way. And Jonathan, thank you for spearheading as the CEO in this really exciting company. We do appreciate that.
Thanks, Brad. The privilege is ours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks, guys.